Yesterday morning at 2:41 a.m. at General Eisenhower's headquarters, General Jodl, the representative of the German High Command, and of Grand Admiral Dönitz, the designated head of the German state, signed the act of unconditional surrender of all German land, sea, and air forces in Europe to the Allied expeditionary forces and simultaneously to the Soviet High Command.
Large amounts of immigrants escaped their home countries because of difficult political and economic conditions. As the Canadian economy began to grow and prosper, more skilled people were needed. There were 3 required elements to immigrate to Canada: good health, moral character, and marketable skills. In 30 years, 4.7 million immigrants were now citizens of Canada. War brides married a ton of Canadian soldiers over during the war. These European women came from Holland, Belgium, Britain, and France. Some of these war brides could not handle the harsh Canadian winters, the isolation from their families back home, or the very different life, and a small percentile moved back home beside the bride's stayed. The baby boom, the post-war Canada population was feeling mixed feelings. There was the fear of the Cold War, but there was as love in the air with all the soldiers returning to their wives back in Canada. Some men brought their war brides and newly born children with them. This group of kids were extremely influential and were known as the baby boomers.
After the Great Depression, many people moved to cities for job opportunities. Because people moved closer to cities, they began to feel secure and decided to start families. This was an important factor that significantly contributed to the existence of the baby boom.
Levittown was a planned community, meaning that a company had bought the land and created one model of a house, which was replicated. These communities express the monotony and sameness of suburban life. Stereotypically, suburban dwellers are displayed as young, Caucasian, middle-class families.
Levittown exhibited many issues. Contractors did not believe that Levittown's population would grow so rapidly. This was a shock because the builders had to get the materials and begin to build more houses.
By the mid-1950s, Canada's economy had recovered post-World War II. After the war, industry quickly adapted to manufacturing technologies to provide large quantities of consumer goods. Manufacturers were eager to hire more workers to increase production. As workers found steady jobs, confidence increased and so did consumer spending. This helped sustain the economy. Television comes to Canada. Many baby boomers grew up glued to the television, provided to be a powerful force in the culture and transition to consumer society. During these years, most shows were broadcasted live. There was no opportunity to correct mistakes. It also changed the view on politicians, as some were not skilled on the television, while others were tremendously skilled. Development of the suburbs. Huge subdivisions were being created around schools, hospitals, and libraries. Most families preferred to live in quiet subdivisions, so by 1954, 250,000 families moved to the suburban communities. With these communities, it avoided families from having to drive and spend money on cars and gas. Teenagers. As the baby boomers grew up, they became a rebellious group. They were a very rebellious group that pioneered rock and roll. They rebelled against fashion by bringing many different styles and new types of clothing. They also rebelled against typical styles of dance. Boundaries were crossed and parents were not happy at all. Music was also very important to these teens, as still is today. The pioneer of rock and roll artists were Paul Anka and Elvis Presley. This music helped inspire teens and also other artists exploring new genres of music.
Trudeau arrives. All of the baby boomers begin to come of age, vote, and were very bored by all the old-fashioned senior politicians. These young adults wanted some guy young, lively, and had great ideas to be able to transform the country and the people. Pierre Elliott Trudeau brought a lot of baby boomer styles into politics. He would wear ridiculous clothing to the House of Commons when everyone was there fully dressed up in suits and ties. He was a very active man. He constantly traveled around the world visiting other countries and always collecting information on how to run an election. He served as a longtime politician in Quebec under the Duplessis regime. The Duplessis era brought Quebec into a defensive state. He promoted traditional values that Quebecers had. He had a very strong opinion on everything, especially the government and his fellow francophones. He was not the most successful premier. Unemployment was high in Quebec, and ultra-conservative education plan was not very popular. With the teens, Canadian-American relations, NORAD, the North American Air Defense, with the development of long-range missiles, Canada and the U.S. decided to create NORAD together to be able to help watch out for each other, and Canada allowed the states to build several defense installations in the Northwest Territories to create a distant early warning line.
Trudeau mania. His enthusiasm, good looks, and charisma made him a very exciting and a very memorable man, as well his reputation as a world traveler, an elite athlete, and an intellectual human being made all of the baby boomers fall in love with Mr. Trudeau. His antics made him a very likable and a very memorable man. No other politician did what he did. He's not a by-the-book kind of a guy. And that's why it appealed to all the people, especially the baby boomers, which were the large majority of the vote. Most of the people voted for the man, not the party platform. The development of Canadian identity, the new flag. The original flag of Canada was made when Confederation happened, and it was just a different version of the British Union Jack. No one had enough guts to make the flag that was independent to Canada, but Lester B. Pearson, the only man, stepped up, decided to have a contest to create a new Canadian flag. Thousands of drawings were sent in, but ultimately one was chosen. There was a great debate with the idea of an independent flag. John Diefenbaker strongly resented to the idea of a new flag and called out Mr. Pearson on it a numerous amount of times. Canada turns 100. You guys all heard about that. In 1967, Canada turned 100. The evening before the centennial flame was lit on Parliament Hill by Prime Minister Pearson, communities all across the country had worked on centennial projects for the past 3 years, and the massive parade showcased all of the work. Queen Elizabeth came to cut the biggest birthday cake ever made in Canada. She flew in all the way from the United Kingdom. A co-production of English and French Canada, it was one of the most successful World's Fairs in history. It was also to celebrate Canada's birthday. 62. Exhilarating nations participated in Expo 67. More than 50 million visitors came to Montreal to admire the awesome exhibits and shows. The themes of the Expo was man and his world. The economic social changes. So the new moral values, like pacifists, people that express their opposition to war and violence by refusing to take up arms and by lobbying for disarmament. Hippies, a youth group from the 60s that rejected many of the customs and beliefs of conventional modern society and believed in simplicity and freedom. French-English relations. Charles de Gaulle, the president of France, came to Quebec to visit during Expo 67. He made a short speech in Montreal that would start an uproar in the entire nation. He made a comment like "Long live free Quebec," which gave the separatists even more fuel to their fire. He was not allowed to return to Canada, and he refused to take back his statement. Canada's relations with France were strained for several years later. Canadian-American relations, economic relations, Canada and the world. Canada as a middle power, Communist Russia and Communist Cuba worked together to potentially help bomb the US, even though it never happened. Russia stored a whole bunch of missiles in Cuba for a quick and a fast attack that the states would not expect at all. When the US found this out, they immediately built defensive walls around their border, and the states able to pick up and destroy a bomb coming into the states. Canadian government suggested that instead of blockade, they have all sites inspected by independent experts.
Toronto, a diverse city of 2.6 million people, and the heart of the region's 5.5 million, is focused on opportunity, livability, and prosperity for all. Toronto is North America's 5th largest city and stands as a thriving gateway to its most lucrative markets. Toronto is prosperous. Toronto is the economic and cultural hub of Canada. With a wide range of research and development, training and world-class educational opportunities, Toronto is continuing its ascent on the global economic stage. Innovation, collaboration, and stable research funding have resulted in groundbreaking biomedical achievements recognized worldwide. The ICT cluster is the 3rd largest in North America, behind only New York and San Francisco. Toronto is recognized as a growing hotbed of design in the fields of architecture, fashion, graphics, and industry, redefining these aesthetics for the world. Toronto is resilient.